Okay, so first of all, as you come to know me during these webinar series, my name is Claudio Santos. I am part of the Porto for Aging Competence Center, so the Competence Center for Active and Healthy Aging in the University of Porto, and we are of course partners of the IN-4-AHA project. First of all, thank you for being here on behalf of the IN-4-AHA consortium. I think it's always good for us to see your presence here and to see your interest in discussing these issues. The theme for today is about impact assessment. So are service providers, companies, stakeholders, institutions, are they assessing the impact of their innovations? Are they analyzing the cost effectiveness of their solutions and the outcomes of those solutions? And so we're kind of going to be having some conversation, some dialogue around this issue. The first moment of our webinar will be, of course, the IN-4-AHA stakeholder survey, which is a survey that we did with service providers. And Annie Kurmis from the Praxis think tank will be presenting that survey. And then on a second level, Francisco Lupianes Villanueva is going to be talking with us about how can we assess impact through MAFIP tool, but also more importantly, what have been the key learnings and the lessons learned from the experience that they had with the tool and from the experience stakeholders and institutions have while using the tool. Then, of course, we're going to be having a Q&A on what are the gaps that exist in the usage of these tools, and of course, other topics that may arise in the meantime. A few reminders that we always do. First of all, this webinar is recorded, so if you're not comfortable or if you don't want to show up on video, just turn off your video camera. You can always put questions by lifting your hand after the presentations, but if not, you can also post the questions on the chat and we'll be answering those, and I'll be constantly monitoring the chat to see the questions. Another important part as well is that the Q&A notes, the recording, and the presentations will be provided afterwards. So if for some reason you have to leave in the meantime, be assured that as long as you signed up for the webinar, you're going to be having those materials as well. And basically, without further ado, because I really don't want to take the stage off of our moments here and of what we're going to be doing and discussing, I would say for Annie Kurmis, if she wants to start presenting what were the conclusions of the IN-4-AHA stakeholder survey and how was that process, she can go ahead. I don't know if Annie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I will continue to share my screen. So can you see the slideshow?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you, Claudio, for the introduction. I will present the brief overview of evaluation toolkits used in the active and healthy aging field with emphasis on human-centeredness. So, Praxis had the task to create a report on innovation impact evaluation for the Innovation Networks for Scaling Active and Healthy Aging project. This report consisted of a theoretical context of innovation, of toolkits and evaluation frameworks, and with a focus on human-centeredness, and also gave an overview of a survey which was carried out to find out current practices of impact evaluation. And later, in addition, a focus group separately also discussed the topics of the survey and gave more insight. The theoretical part of our report gave an overview of toolkits and evaluation frameworks. For this, 3 toolkits or frameworks were selected. The Monitoring and Assessment Framework for the European Innovation Partnership on Active and Healthy Aging, FAPE. A model for assessment of telemedicine applications, MUST, and the Non-Adoption, Abandonment, Scale-Up, Spread Sustainability Framework, also known as NAS. But how and why exactly did we choose these 3? First, we gathered all the toolkits that included health and wellness aspects. In total, we found around 105 different toolkits. We then narrowed down the search to toolkits that had the innovation assessment perspective, which led us to 36 toolkits. Then again, we narrowed our selection down to health and well-being innovation assessment, focusing on the following domains, which you can see on the right side table. The domains were selected based on recognized evaluation frameworks and previous knowledge. And by that time, we had around 20 toolkits. And after taking the domains into consideration, we selected the 3 previously mentioned that fit best our criteria. The domains were very much active and healthy aging related, taking into consideration the different aspects of health and social care, and with an emphasis on human-centeredness. The slideshow seems to not work. Okay. The domains you can see right now, for example, are very much related to the human-centeredness topic. But what exactly is human-centeredness and why does our report put so much emphasis on it? Human-centeredness and human-centered design is very much different from many traditional practices because the focus lies within the people from who the solution is intended rather than the designer's wishes or the technology itself. This means that the human is at the center of the design and the solution. The greatest challenges in health and social care, and therefore active and healthy aging field, are centered at the human level. Sometimes technology can complicate human-to-human relationships instead of improving them. And additionally, demographic changes, growing social and cultural inequalities, and greater health expectations have put more emphasis in most Western societies to implement human-centered technology-supported care. And although only a few would argue about the overall need for human-centeredness, there is less agreement on how to make human-centered and technology-supported personal care a reality in everyday practice. Researchers argue that there is a significant gap between the enthusiasm, high hopes, and expectations of different stakeholders and the challenges of implementing technology in actual practice. They point to the need for new research. And also this is the main reason why the Innovation for AHA project decided to focus on human-centeredness. But to come back to the toolkits and frameworks, the 3 mentioned before turned out to be more or less helpful and effective for assessing innovation from the perspective of human-centeredness. For example, NAS is quite an effective tool for evaluating innovation regarding human-centeredness. It contained most of the domains proposed, but there were some aspects which this framework did not cover. MUST, on the other hand, is a very practical tool, but not when assessing human-centeredness. New domains have been suggested to improve its relevance. And MFAPE has a quite different objective to evaluate the cost effectiveness of innovation and the likelihood of the innovation to achieve its desired impact. This means the emphasis is not on the most human-centered domains, and from this perspective, MFAPE is not the best to assess human-centeredness. With that being said, though, we would like to highlight once again that the analysis was carried out with emphasis on human-centeredness, and the comparison does not contrast the toolkits and evaluation frameworks as a whole, but from the perspective of human-centered domains. So onto the survey and focus group results. As part of this project, we also conducted a survey of service providers in Europe, which aimed to map out current practices in measuring the impact of innovative solutions. Later, a focus group was also carried out to further discuss the topics and gain more insight. The survey was conducted among the IN-4-AHA network of innovative solution providers, and a total of 40 solution providers participated from 15 different countries. And in the focus group, 27 people participated, and around half of them in our breakout room and in our topic. The emphasis was on solution providers since they are usually the most likely and the ones who conduct innovation assessment. So first, we wanted to know how many responders have assessed their innovation. Our survey results showed us that the majority of respondents have not assessed their solution. This was 26 people out of 40. Our focus group provided some possible reasons for this, and it was said that the toolkits can be quite complex. They usually contain multiple very different domains, and this creates the need for customization. Service providers stated that when evaluating impact, they do not need to evaluate all domains, or some do not apply to their solutions at all. It was said that toolkits have quite specific aims, so the toolkit cannot be used universally and by all service providers, since the needs for evaluation are different. These results, although, cannot be generalized. Then we asked the service providers who have carried out impact assessment, what toolkits or frameworks have they used? 36% have used MAFAPE, and around 20 have used NAS and MUST. We asked the focus group what are the main reasons for using toolkits, and they responded that it is mainly the reason and need to find out the overall impact of the innovation. This includes impact on all fields of life, economic, social, environmental, and so on. Multiple people agreed that for them as service providers, it is very necessary and important to know how the innovation affects, for example, the end users and their close ones, the economy, for example, or the health and social care system, and so on. Secondly, some providers said using toolkits is important to analyze the effectiveness, usability, and accessibility of their solution. This can be an input whether some changes should be made regarding the technicality of the solution. This means the evaluation can be used to improve the solution and to gain valuable insight of user experience. Once again, though, these answers should not be generalized. We asked the same questions in the survey as well, and the responses were a bit different. Some responders feel impact assessment makes it possible for the organization to receive support for scaling up the service in new markets or target groups, while it was also very important input for the solution development process. And the last question we asked our focus group participants was which domains the toolkits should ideally include. And once again, the topic of human-centeredness was emphasized. And different domains were considered regarding this. The domains discussed as most necessary were social impact, economic impact, impact on health care system, outcomes of personal health, and policy. The group agreed all the domains are very interconnected, and it is important to analyze this. And impact on one topic can further impact other topics as well. From the point of human-centeredness, all the domains are important, but outcomes on personal health could be emphasized, as was brought out by the group. It is important to evaluate if the innovation improves the quality of life and benefits the user. From the economic point of view, while it is also very important to analyze the impact of the solution on the overall economic system, it is also necessary to assess the impact on the person's wealth and financial situation. And since these domains are very related to one another, the group agreed on the main reasons for why these domains are necessary. And it was concluded that the domains are helpful because one, they provide insight on whether the innovation is accessible and high quality. And two, the domains help assess the equability and fairness of the solution. And the third reason is that they provide helpful insight on whether the innovation needs improvement and can be scaled up. So this was a brief overview of our report on evaluation toolkits and frameworks and the conclusion of the survey and focus group results. So thank you from me.
Thanks a lot, Ani. We'll be basically approaching some of these topics later on. But for now, I would just go over to Francisco. He's going to be presenting us the MAFAPE tool and some of the lessons learned with the MAFAPE tool. So Francisco, if you're, yeah, exactly. So I'll just give way to the virtual stage for Francisco.
First, let me start by saying why evaluation. And it's clear that we still need to pass the message to all the stakeholders that without evaluation, there may be no impact, because we are not able to capture what our innovations are doing. Contrary to what is said, nowadays still technology is a driver of expenditure, okay? And this is really, really important. If we do not contain the rise of the cost, healthcare system may not be sustainable. So this is the first reason to conduct evaluation, and why in the previous presentation there was still, I cannot remember, most of the participants of the respondents say they did not conduct any evaluation. And I think it's important to raise awareness about the need to do this, because resources are not unlimited, and we need to allocate resources depending on the results of the evaluation. Another important thing, another remark, another lesson learned from several years of conducting evaluation in the field is that sometimes innovators or stakeholders, we all talk about evaluation, but we are not sure what we are talking about. And therefore, there is a need to clearly establish at the beginning, even at the beginning of the conceptualization of the innovation, an evaluation framework. Meaning, what are the inputs we are using, what are the outputs we are expecting, and what will be the results of these outcomes. It seems very trivial, this slide, this evaluation framework, but we notice, and the results from the previous survey revealed that too, that people do not have in mind evaluation when talking about innovation. And we consider that one of the main goals, or one of the goals of MAFEIP, was to raise awareness about the innovation, about the innovators, about the companies, around the companies, about the importance of conducting an evaluation. Second point, it's about questions. Independently of the framework or of the tool we are using, it's important to understand what type of questions do we want to answer when conducting an evaluation, okay? In our years conducting cost effectiveness analysis using MAFEIP, we always put all the innovators, all the stakeholders in front of these three types of questions. Again, simple questions that needs to be answered even before starting, okay? I know that it's difficult to reply some of them at the beginning, but the fact that people start thinking about them at the very beginning, it's important, because then they will conduct the evaluation at the end. So first question, did the program, the intervention, the technology achieve the targeted objectives and outputs? So what do you have in mind as innovation? What do you expect at the end of the journey? This will be modifying, let's say, behavior that will improve the quality of life of the individual. This technology will be producing cost savings while keeping the quality of life of individual constant. So this type of questions needs to be addressed at the beginning of the intervention, at the beginning of the innovation. The second type of questions is this output or this outcome can be attributed only to the intervention? And here we enter with this multi-dimensional perspective, okay? So it was mentioned before, we have policy, we have economic impact, we have service provision. There are many, many elements, okay, that needs to be taken into account while conducting the evaluation. This does not mean that we need to factor in all the elements into the evaluation. This is important because sometimes we see really complex frameworks that at the end of the day cannot be implemented because they are too complex. Reality is very complex. Evaluating this type of intervention should be understood as as a kind of simplification in order to capture some effects. And some other effects cannot be captured, but we consider like constant, so to speak, okay? I'm thinking about usability. Obviously, usability it's important. Obviously, it needs to be considered. But if we want to take into account the final outcome in the quality of life, usability is going to be one item. And I wonder if it's the most important or not at certain point, okay? Then the last type of questions, why and how we achieve this, okay? And then we start interpreting the results. And here we enter into more theory-based process or outcome evaluation, where all the qualitative elements are relevant. This is from a report that just came up a few weeks ago, and I think it clearly shows, we call it the valuation pipeline, why we need evaluation and why if we do not conduct evaluation, we cannot reach the market, okay? So in this axis, you have limited or lack of studies and notable, let's say, evidence, okay? And then here you have the results, whether they are positive or negative, okay? And in the upper part, in the right upper part, you have the candidates for inclusion, for example, in clinical guidelines, okay? We have from no studies conducting about evaluation to multiple meta-analysis studies, okay? At certain point, you will need to conduct one of those if you want to be eligible, if you want to get paid at certain point for your innovation, okay? With the lack of evaluation, you cannot prove to your potential clients or health systems that it works. This is why you need to conduct evaluation before even going to the market, okay? This can be from observational studies to running the same type of study in different sites to randomized control trial. There is a lot of critics when we talk about the use of technology and randomized control trials. They are needed at certain point, multiple randomized control trials, and then meta-analysis, meaning that from all the previous studies, I will extract some lessons learned. With MAFEIP, you could take advantage of the previous experience of the previous studies to simulate your evaluation, okay? So this is why it's important. With no studies, using whatever tool you want, it's very difficult to reach the market, very difficult to be sold as a product in some healthcare systems. The more studies you have, the more evidence you have, the easiest would be to get to be a candidate to be included in clinical guidelines in the case of, let's say, care. Now we move more specifically to the MAFEIP, what it does, okay? What it does is it runs cost effectiveness analysis. And again, if we go back to the previous slides, we have input, output, outcomes, efficiency, and effectiveness, okay? It does this, so it's supporting evidence-based decision-making. So a provider wants to buy your technology, your innovation, you need to prove that, look, by spending this, your patients will be the same or better, and you will be spending more, but they are better, or even less, okay? So it's a decision analytical modeling tool. I mean, obviously, people are at the center of any evaluation, especially when we talk about health, because the final outcome, it's gonna be the quality of life of these individuals, okay? So most of the tools, they have to consider these individuals in the center because it's the outcome of your interventions is going to be really related to these individuals, okay? At the end, what it estimates is the health and economic outcomes, okay? And it's important to emphasize of a large variety of ICT-enabled social and health innovation. The tool is flexible enough so you can simulate and conduct your evaluation, whether it's mobile health, e-health, or other potential telemedicine type of intervention. Another important element of the MAFEIP or running cost effectiveness analysis, I would say, is that you have a community of users around you. Okay, in the case of MAFEIP, this community went from 0 to more than 300 participants. They have already generated several cases. Some of them has been published in top ranked journals in the field of medical informatics, and you can learn from them. So you have a community of individuals working in the field, and you can extract lessons learned from their evaluations to your evaluations. And by lessons learned, I also mean parameters. So one of the traditional complaints is that, look, I don't have this data. Well, if you don't have this data, you can go to the literature, you can go to the previous, let's say, evaluations and borrow this, like an hypothesis. Okay, let's assume that the impact will be this one. Let's assume that the cost will be that one. So you can always rely on the community and on other publications to understand how the impact would look like after conducting the intervention. Obviously, if you have your data, the full data, then it's going to be easy for you to run your own analysis. What it does, MAFEIP, and why we consider it's important. First of all, as I was saying before, if you want to go to the market, even if you get the closest you get to the medical device and health technology assessment, the more you would need to run a cost effectiveness analysis to enter the market, okay? What it does is it simulates the transition between health status of the population, of the target population, of your intervention or of your innovation, and the quality of life, okay? Quality of life, it has been measured. Sometimes it has not been captured, but we can always approach quality of life through any other type of indicator. What we are doing at the end of the day, when we conduct cost effectiveness analysis, is measuring the difference that our intervention, our innovation made in the individuals. So what we are capturing is whether there was an incremental effect on the utility that individuals are capturing when using your innovation, okay? Normally, as I said before, this is quality of life. So by using this technology, my quality of life improves or not, okay? On the other axis, you have the cost of providing this innovation. So at the end of the day, whether using this innovation, the cost was higher or lower when running the intervention, okay? These two axes, the difference, the incremental ratios in these two axes, it gives you 4 quadrants. Whether your intervention is more expensive and worse, meaning you need to start again, because the market will not buy something that is more expensive and it's worse. The intervention is cheaper but worse. Yeah, my technology is very cheap. Yeah, but people do not perceive any impact, or your technology does not change the quality of life. So yeah, it's cheaper, but it doesn't make a difference. So why should I be paying for that? The intervention is dominant, meaning it's cheaper and it's better. This is the ideal scenario. Normally with technology, it's not like it happens all the time. This means that by using this innovation, this technology, I decrease the cost and I increase the quality of life, okay? This is quite rare because technology is a cost, it's a driver for cost, okay? But it could happen, especially if we scale up the intervention or the innovation and we maximize the number of users through economies of scale. And then finally, the intervention is better, okay? So it has a difference in the quality of life of individuals. It has an impact on the people, okay, on the individuals, but I have to add some cost here, okay? And then it's up to society whether they want to pay or not for that, okay? Clear example of this is COVID. This is, for me, the clear example. When the pandemic started, there was a need to start using this tool, yes or yes. Nobody cares at that point about the cost because the utility was huge. Otherwise, people will not receive care, okay? So what we did basically is We move the point from here and here to here. Okay, why? People were willing to pay more because the quality they received, it was great. Otherwise, they cannot receive the treatment. Okay, so this type of quadrants allow us to simulate our innovation and to take decisions. For example, if I want, imagine that you are in a situation when you improve a little bit the quality of life, but the cost is very high, extremely high. You are over here. Okay, maybe I have to think about the cost strategy, the pricing strategy of my intervention. Okay, or the opposite, the cost is very cheap. Okay, but it does not have an impact. Okay, I need to raise the cost because I need to have an impact on individuals in order to have a difference in the effect on the quality of life. Maffei allows you to do these ex ante and ex post calculations in order to see whether your intervention, whether your innovation is going to be cost effective or not, and where it will be located. Why? What is the lesson learned, or why we should be start using, again, Maffei or any other tool? I mean, for me now, the important thing is raise awareness about the valuation. You need this because nowadays it's not like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like, okay, innovation is cool, innovation will change the world, and so on and so forth. You need to prove that your innovation is cost effective. Your innovation is worth paying for that. If you are a healthcare provider, you need to know that because you are using, in most cases, public money, and you need to be accountable. So I'm paying that because my patients are better in a cost-effective way. If you are a policymaker deciding whether I have to spend money on A and B, you need to choose between technology A, B, or C, and you need some reference point. You need some metrics, okay? And most likely, usability will not be enough. Why? Because we need to capture the impact on the budget, on the cost, and the effectiveness of this cost into the quality of life of individuals. If you are a company and you want to reach the market, you need that figure. At a certain point, they will ask you to show the evidence because there is a public money around, because you have competitors, but you need that. If you are a researcher designing interventions or designing technologies, at a certain point, you need to start thinking about the outcome, not just in terms of your own research KPIs, but in terms of the quality of life of individuals and what is the cost of this quality of life for the health systems. That's all. Thank you very much again for the invitation, and I'm more than happy to take questions.
Thanks a lot, Paco, for your presentation and for your insights. Now we're going to be moving on to the Q&A/discussion part of it. I will just basically start up with a few questions, and people in the audience, if you want to step in, please feel free to do so. The first one is, of course, for Hile Hinsberg. She's also participating in this Q&A as part of the Proud Engineers team. And my first one would be to Hile or to Hani, to everyone who wants to answer. But the IN-4-AHA survey for service providers, it had a clear focus on service providers. Are any of its conclusions able to be inferred from service providers to other stakeholders? Is this something that you took into account? Just a few comments on that.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Claudio, for the question and for kind of prompting the discussion points here. First of all, let me shortly remind or come back to the original point of conducting this survey. The review that was made and that Taimi presented was conducted to gather and then be an input to actually improve. I'm not using the word develop because that would mean creating from scratch. There's no need for that. but to improve evaluation approaches and frameworks that might already be in use, but to make them more beneficial when we have human-centeredness and human focus in mind. So this is the objective of gathering and collecting information, insights on the practices. And the practices are in the hands of service providers. For sure, I suppose we all understand that all of the stakeholders that you mentioned, the policymakers, the funders, and the public funders and the private investors alike, they are as interested as service providers are in the outcomes of these initiatives, these innovations, these new solutions. They want them to not only succeed, but to really demonstrate that they are worthwhile, that they're worthwhile supporting, they are producing the impacts exactly as Paco here was explaining. Do I get value for money? Do I get the real outcomes to my health? This is from the human perspective, or do we get good services on the market? Do we afford, and is it worthwhile to pay for that, etc.? So the aims are pretty overarching. That is sort of a given. But we wanted to know exactly if and how these aspects are addressed in evaluating on the ground the initiatives and the solutions that are already there, that are already in place, that are already on the market. We took care in asking about the maturity levels of these solutions with a view that our job within this project, this coordination and support action, is to support scale up, to help services spread, disseminate, gain new markets, gain new customers, be more in use across borders and with new target groups. So we have a very, I would say, tangible objective here currently in this project to come up with some proposals for changes, for improving and perhaps adopting some indicators, or for gaining better practical, I would say, evaluation practices to be used more by service providers and to be accepted by all the other stakeholders, policymakers, funders, and yes, maybe even public health systems if it comes to adoption in the public ecosystem.
Because
so
yeah, because the reasons may be a bit different. So the reasons for
they might be
usage of
different.
these tools, you know.
Yes, they might be different, and that is absolutely fine, because from each stakeholder's perspective, the interest might be different. I mean, as a service providers, and I can see some of you here, they have a very tangible interest to get to know if their service will work, if it can be adopted, and if it can be useful for the customers, for the people. And of course, when we go to more meso or macro level, then the policymakers on the health system representatives might have a different approach. What I'm saying is that these objectives could perhaps be combined, and human-centeredness, as was demonstrated, can be the sort of, if not the absolute central or the let's say the underlying aspect, but at least it can be perhaps pretty universal. So regardless of the regional or national health system, regardless of the requirements for clinical trial, it is, I would say, it should be valued and it should be evaluated, perhaps in a more unified way and in a more practical way. And we don't know how yet, because we need to work some of the indicators out.
Also, this is something that I'm now just going to pass it to Paco, because, well, stakeholders have different reasons for this evaluation. And from your experience, Paco, I mean, from your experience at Open Evidence, I'm guessing some of these conclusions, some of these needs kind of ring true. But at the same time, I mean, if there are differences in the way stakeholders use these tools, then you need to be able to customize them. You need to be able to change the tools for your purpose. How much of an extra effort is this? How much of an extra step is this for stakeholders?
I mean, what we cannot create, I mean, all the all the actors are in the same ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So these produce for these people who buy, and so the ecosystem is unique, especially in the public health systems, which in Europe it's the reality, and it's the best reality we can have compared with the US, for example. Okay, so we have just one ecosystem of buyers, sellers, and users. We cannot pretend to have one evaluation tool per intervention. We cannot pretend to have a specific tools for a specific domains, because this ecosystem needs to talk the same language, so to speak, okay? This is why in health economics, this cost effectiveness analysis has been there for many years, because at the end of the day, I pay in because I receive quality of life increase. Why? So my suggestion is that, look, let's not reinvent the wheel, as you were saying before, the other panelist was saying, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's start using the wheels we have. Because the problem now is that people are not conducting evaluations, and I don't care about the tool. And it's a basic question, did it work? Yes or not? So, and then you can say, did it work on A? Did it work on B? Did it work on, you can put several dimensions. But first we need to formulate this type of questions clearly to see what we are evaluating. Because sometimes when we were talking with innovators, I have a very good technology, it will do the revolution, blah, 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 blah. And so what? What is the revolution in terms of the quality of life of individuals? Well, I don't know. So then, yeah, maybe you're doing a revolution, but it's in your house, not in the health system, so to speak.
It's in your mind in a way.
Yeah, so my full point is that we have already in place many tools. We have already in place many concepts that will help us, and many methodologies. Let's pass the message across all the stakeholders that this is needed if we want to reach the market. That's it. And the market is healthcare providers, healthcare authorities, innovators, and patients, so to speak. So that is the message we were trying to convey all the time. It's like, keep it simple. You want to achieve A, B, and C, put the indicators, and then assess it.
But that's also an important part of it, as you said. It needs to be something that's thought before the project starts, or during the beginning of the project. It needs to be something that's structural. I mean, if I'm going to implement something, I need to think right away, what is my expected impact, and what are the key performance indicators, let's simplify it like that I need to be on the lookout for. And during this process, I mean, this process is reasonably simple, but we also have one question in the Q&A on the chat, which is it easy for a company to do so, or do they need experts to help them, or is it just really about them sitting down and just writing it up?
If I may, yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you, Alenka, for that. As you said, Claudia, each and every company, I'm sure, all the startups or the solution providers, they have their own metrics, and they should have their own indicators in place while designing and beginning to deploy the service, of course. Now, our hypothesis is that perhaps they are more concentrated on kind of the market or business value. There might be, economic, well, let's say, efficiency and
Instead
also
of profit or
preferably, of
operation.
course, effectiveness. Yes. So all these domains that we showed and that people said in the survey and also in the focus group, they kind of, all of this picture rings a bell and is very, very important. What we are asking is human focus, and not usability, but human kind of centeredness. Can it be taken as a value that can be turned more tangible by right type of indicators? And then, yes, that it should be spread across the community of stakeholders and evaluated more than it is right now, and communicated about this. And it should also be perhaps one of the, I would say, one of the markers on the path to gain new markets, to gain new investments, to be adopted and approved by public institutions, and to scale up if necessary to, and if wished, to new markets. So what we are kind of trying to operationalize here is how this domain can be addressed. And yes, Paco, with any evaluation tools that are willing and that see the benefit of it. So it's not reinventing the wheel, definitely, but just making it more tangible and usable.
Yeah, the other thing, I think evidence-based medicine has been working in capturing the patient perspective lately. Okay, this is an important trend, and I think we have some developments there in the way this human-centric approach has been measured through quality of life, but now we have PROMs and PREMs. So there are already tools out there where we can capture the value of the outcome from a patient perspective, because at the end of the day, all we are doing, it's for the patients and for the economy. So when a company is looking about effectiveness on efficiency, they need to put the humans into the equation through the quality of life, through the PREMs or through the PROMs. Okay, thanks, Diane, and put it in the equation. They are already indicators out there that can be put into a logic framework of input, outcome, and outcomes. On top of that, you have all the qualitative elements related to adoption, which is a subset in the outcome, so to speak, okay? But I think that, we have progressed a lot on this human-centric approach, quantifying this through indicators, either quality of life, PROMs, or PREMs. We just need to spread the word, and companies can use them and can budget this into their pipeline of production. Whether it's easy or not, I mean, most of the innovative SME, they do incredible things. They have an incredible capacity to learn. They need to invest. If they don't want to invest on this, which is for an engineer is not rock science, they can pay for that services. But it's something that you can definitely learn. And there is something you definitely need to take into account when you are approaching the market, especially quality of life of the individuals.
Yeah, if I can add on this last topic. Yeah, I also think that an SME, a startup, a solution or service provider can do this evaluation, can commission this evaluation, use just, let's say, impact evaluation experts as methodology experts. Maybe also some kind of external help to choose between the tools that are available. And you heard there are a lot of those. So just make an analysis on that might require some external help. But definitely, we know there are accelerator programs and there are all kinds of scale-up support programs that also include this evaluation know-how in their program. So I would encourage SMEs who seek for help to enter this kind of opportunities and to make good use of this kind of skills.
Okay, just one thing that also you were mentioning about prompts and prompts. These as health outcomes, I mean, this is also something that was kind of approached by Annie during her presentation. It's health outcomes are very important, but it seems like stakeholders also want to know some different things like economics, social benefits that an introduction of a given innovation can have on the market. Most of these tools, from what I understand, and this is both to Paco and to Hilly, most of these tools can actually be complemented by these indicators relatively easy, right? So it's not really a problem of the tools. It's more of how much work do I want to have in setting this up, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So depending on the tool itself, but by looking at MAFAPE, it became quite clear that it already is used very different, a variety, very diverse use cases, and can be used, so it can be flexibly adapted to the different purposes that I remind you our survey was presenting quite clearly that the service providers themselves, only this stakeholder group already has very different needs and different purposes for evaluating, either for grants, for some kind of benefits, for improving their service, etc., etc. These were listed. And yes, from the chat, EIT Health is a member of our consortium, so we are thankful for their experience, and we'll definitely be exploring their approach in impact evaluation that they use in accelerator programs as well as the framework with prompts.
So Paco, do you want to comment regarding this idea of outside of health outcomes and their importance?
I think as important as the tools that are out there, excuse me, is the design. How do you plan to do that? And then you will find the tools. So asking the right question at the beginning of the innovation or during the full process, I'm sure that you will find the right tool and the right design, because at certain point you may need to, and the traditional, I take the pill, I do not take the pill. So there is, compared to other fields in medicine, you have all this experimental design that you can apply when testing your technologies. And then you can generate the evidence to prove to your buyers that, hey, it's worth spending money on that.
You actually mentioned something that's very interesting, just to catch on very quickly, because in medicine, medical devices, in a lot of these of the innovative areas that we're talking about, there's actually a very strict regulatory process, and you have a lot of analysis before you can get to the market. That's also an opportunity. I mean, if you're already going to go through that process of gathering data, testing, validating very extensively, I mean, that's also a big opportunity to just include impact, just include tools to evaluate and assess more clearly during the whole process. So it seems like a perfect fit.
Indeed, I mean, and you see this now with all these digital therapeutics, which at the end of the day is digital health plus a cost effectiveness analysis, but now we call it digital therapeutics. So at the end of the day, it's just to have a mark there, like at certain point you need to assess. The better, just the sooner the start, the better. Sorry, my dog.
No problem.
So
just one thing that I wanted to, this is kind of the final question, is we've been talking a lot, and I think the discussion has kind of led to this conclusion of the lack of usage of a lot of these assessments and evaluation tools. But in your opinion, what is the biggest gap, and what can IN-4-AHA or other projects, of course, other European projects or other CSAs do about this to kind of help close in this gap?
For me, the bigger gap is awareness and the need of include evaluation as soon as possible in the pipeline if you want to reach the market. Because, I mean, we are talking about highly qualified individuals. So it's not that they are able to do wonderful things. So they will be able to conduct evaluation. But they need to know. They need to know that this is important because someone is paying for something, and this something should be worth. So for me, awareness about the importance of evaluation to evaluate to capture impact is the main barrier.
Okay, so Ila, do you want to comment?
Yes, I'm actually very grateful that Alberto has shared his insights in the chat here as well, and this is also something that that I feel is the need for finding the right balance between, let's say, unification, simplification of these indicators, because if the frameworks and the tools become too complex, then simply the market will not use them, and that is perhaps now already seen. One of the reasons that they are not spread. So there needs to be a balance. We cannot oversimplify. I'm sure you all agree with that. But there is somehow, we need to find the way to address the right, let's say, outcomes, of course, the details of these outcomes, so that they could be valid and relevant for the variety of innovations and solutions, whether we are talking about AI, whether we are talking about well, patient decision-making or shared decision-making, and anything in between. The active and healthy aging domain is very, very varied. So we are not talking about only one type of, let's say, telemonitoring or telehealth applications. We are not only talking about clinical things, we are talking about very different types of interventions. So there needs to be the balance between, let's say, customized and flexibility, and still some sort of unifications. Why the latter is necessary, exactly for the reason for the market, for the funders, for the policymakers to make sense what is beneficial and what is not. So we cannot totally fragmentize and be very, very customized, and each individual solution deserves its own treatment in evaluation. And that is the thing that needs to be done, but it's complicated.
Yeah, but also Alberto also mentioned it well. I mean, the role of the IN-4-AHA project can also be to go through these problems and to understand what is kind of a format, what's kind of a few recommendations on this. Try and get the wheel. I mean, the wheel is already going for a few years, but if we detect there's a gap there, then maybe that's also something that we need to work on. So it seems to me like, and this is also something that Diane said, it seems that it's always about clarity, about people understanding where are the tools, how they can use them, what they need to do, and what point, like the right questions they need to ask. But this is a big challenge. I mean, we're talking about a field that, as you said, Healy, is very different. There's a lot of different solutions, from medical devices to e-health or telehealth or other types of solutions. There's a lot in this field. So we also kind of have to go through and make sense of clutter and of different approaches and of different ways to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm reading the last comment here by Diane. So I think we also carry the same kind of understanding that the user being not only happy, but really experiencing the benefit or the impact on their situation, on their quality of life, on their health, on their welfare, is supposedly the best and the most effective way of that the initiative can get. So this should be tapped into, and this we hope to be doing, to find the right indicators that would express this, and that can be used in varied contexts and in varied solutions. Clear communication, articulation, story about the importance. Yes, it's also part of, I would say, ongoing communication by anyone, any stakeholder who is part of this active and healthy aging ecosystem. It's all of us. It's all of our responsibility, not just within the project, but anyone involved. So I very much agree to Paco's message here that the different options for evaluation tools and approaches should be known. And that means a lot of communication efforts. But let's not put the aim to sort of all size fits everyone, or all should be follow the same model or the same kind of evaluation approach. Certainly, this is not our aim in this project.
Okay, I'm actually going to go through the chat again for this. Also, one last question, one last comment from Chariklia. If the focus is on impact at all levels and among different stakeholders, what is, I mean, we need to get the industry and SMEs and all stakeholders even to put impact in front of anything they do. But the thing is, ultimately, decisions are up to people. So we can provide the tools, we can provide a lot of it, but they will always be the ones deciding. So what do you think? Do you think this is feasible to put impact in front of everything? What are the key considerations to have here? This is also food for thought, right? It's also
it's absolutely food for thought, but I would hope to make this value, impact above all, very tangible. So, and I hope, Paco, your tool, Maffei tool, and several other tools have addressed this with all of your work, how to do it, how to make it happen. So it's very kind of common to say that measuring impact and knowing about the impact is of utmost importance, but how exactly, using what kind of methodologies, what kind of tools, what kind of indicators, keep it as simple and as practical as possible. So I think that's an ongoing work. So while I agree with this call and challenge, then not only our project, it is a challenge, but not only our project, but definitely several parallel EU-funded projects are trying to find a way to this.
Okay, so Paco, do you want to add anything? We're going to be closing off, so I don't know if you want to add an additional comment here. We
are late. We need to start evaluating, so that's my final comment.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. We've been discussing a lot of these issues throughout the webinars of the IN-4-AHA project. We'll be coming back after the summer, so in September we're going to start having webinars and workshops again. Once again, thanks a lot for everyone who was actually here. If you haven't been able to go to one of our webinars or one of our workshops, we're going to be working on kind of a recap, kind of a summary over the next few weeks of all of the discussions that we've been having with the videos and with recordings of each webinar. So this will always be an opportunity for you to, if you have an interest in one of the topics we approached, if you want to review something again, please do so. But also to the ones that are here today, you'll be receiving over the next few days, both the recording and the meeting notes and the Q&A notes, as well as the presentations for this webinar. So you can reach out to us if you have any question or if you want to get in touch with any of the stakeholders present here today. So from my side, just big thank you to everyone who attended, and also hope until September that you had a nice vacation period. Hope that you get some very needed rest in these times. So please, let's keep in touch. Let's keep the conversation going. And once again, thanks. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Claudio. And if I may just add, besides thanks, please do reach out to us if you have any proposals to how to go about because this is our aim to operationalize now this human centeredness into concrete indicators, and we
I think we're having some trouble listening to you,
with our
Hilary.
pilots who have been selected to go through process. Okay, can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, we can hear you now, I think it's...
So I'm just underlying the importance of reaching out and suggesting all of your good thoughts, because we will be going step by step towards operationalizing this human centeredness into indicators and into evaluation frameworks that will be conducted with our pilots, our innovative services that have been selected and will be undergoing a testing process. And human focus, human centeredness is certainly the underlying approach there as well.
I think that if you don't address impact right up front, you can't evaluate anything really, because there are a million ways to evaluate it. That's my gut feeling. Keep going in circles here.
That's also a challenge for the next few discussion points, webinars, actions.
Great having this discussion. Yeah. I really think it's a good beginning. I like it.
Okay, so once again, thanks everyone. Anything
Thank
you need, please reach out. We'll keep in touch. Okay.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Wonderful summer. Bye.
Bye bye.